again, and welcome back to The Pursuit. I'm Pastor Cameron Martin. Picking up where we left off last time in our previous message, which I called You're Dead to Me. We're halfway through, I think, this series about death, resurrection, rebirth, following Jesus all the way through that process. So we started off with where we were not sure if we were stable or not, recognizing our need. And so then we had to take a step forward, and what we had to discover or maybe acknowledge was we're not dead yet. So that message a couple weeks or a little while ago was called I'm Not Dead Yet. Then we went from I'm not dead yet to You're Dead to Me, referring to ourselves. And now this one I'm calling The Walking Dead, because we have to actually figure out how to behave in our new state where we have followed Jesus into his death, identifying with his death, accepting his death as our own, and then into baptism before we can be raised again to new life. So now we are the walking dead. When we choose to die with Jesus, or again, identify with his death, we don't just lay down and wait to be carried off. We have to be active still, regardless of our current spiritual state. There is no just not existing for a moment. We are always in a state of existence, even before we were here on this planet. So we must live our new life as a new creation, but not just live our old life all over again. This new start as we come up out of the waters of baptism, from dying and being buried with Jesus, him raising us again. If we just start back where we were before, we should just expect to end up where we were before, which again is that instability and the struggle that we seem to have even in the church. So again, we must live our new life as a new creation. And we can do that when we do the few things that we're going to cover today, which is connect to Christ, carry our cross, and continue to follow Jesus. These are going to sound kind of similar to last week, because last week we ended with connecting, but it was just the idea and acknowledgement to connect. So we're going to talk a little bit more this week about connecting to Christ, carrying our cross. Last time we just took it up, so I know it sounds similar, but it's not quite the same. And then how do we continue to follow him? So connect, carry, and continue. So ideally, over time, we are less and less telling that old man no, and beginning to focus on doing the maintenance of our new life. Because many feel like following Jesus, the Bible, church, is essentially just a bunch of rules. If we look at it that way, then that is what we end up doing. We just end up telling ourselves, no, I can't do that, and no, I shouldn't do that, and no, I shouldn't feel that way, and no, I can't continue to do these things. But we won't do that over time, because we'll spend less and less time doing that and more maintaining our new life, which is telling the new man, Jesus, yes. Less no to the old man and more yes. What did I say? Less no to the old man and more yes to the new man, which our new man is found in Jesus. It's fueled by Jesus. It is of him. We identify in his death, and we're identifying with his life in his resurrection. So we are very much him and a part of his body in the new life, and we are fueled by him. So we are him, and what comes through us is him. What flows out of us, again, him. So we just need to focus on saying more yes to him. So again, let's start with the first part, which is to connect. Again, last week, we finished by acknowledging the need to connect to our new source of life. So today we'll focus on how we maintain that connection. So how we can make use of the life that comes through that connection if we keep it maintained and flowing. That's our goal. Make use of the life, maybe we could call it life force, that comes through our connection with Jesus if we keep that connection maintained and be sure that it's continually flowing, which doesn't mean just flowing in, it means also flowing out. We'll cover more of this throughout today and in future messages. So First, today we're going to start with John 15:5. Last time we ended with John 15:4. Now jumping right into John 15:5, where Jesus says, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, I've always been a fan of this portion of scripture around John 5:15, which is why we're going to spend some more time in it the next time we meet. So he says, apart from me, you can do nothing. He does not say you cannot do anything. He says you can do nothing. A whole lot of nothing. You can look at your life and probably see there's lots of time spent, lots of effort spent, sometimes lots of resources spent, but we don't always have a lot to show for it. Sometimes we have nothing to show for it. And that's what he's saying here. He's saying if we stay connected to him, we can do things. And if we are apart from him, we are still doing things, like I said earlier, but it becomes nothing, or it comes to nothing. It's worth nothing. The eternal value is zero. So we don't want to just do things. We want to do things with eternal value. And that begins when we connect to the source. Again, it's a flow of life, a flow of eternal life. Just like the vine, Jesus is illustrating for us here. As a branch, we connect to the vine, and everything necessary for fruit comes from the vine into the branches. Everything necessary for fruit to grow comes from the vine and into the branches. And it does not end in those branches. It ends in fruit coming through the branches. Also, the fruit is not for the branches. Many times we end up with nothing because we use what comes through us, and it ends with us. It doesn't continue through us and go forward. And so many times that's why we feel we don't have what it takes, or we feel like we could never do what God is asking of us. He enables what he calls us to do. He gives us the grace to do the things he's called us to do. But if he knows we're not going to do those things, he's not going to provide that grace. And so we'll feel like we don't have what it takes to get them done, because we don't, until we hear him ask and invite us into those situations or relationships or actions, and then we are obedient, we step toward them, and then he provides the fuel, the opportunity to accomplish what he actually wants accomplished in those situations. So the fruit is not for the branches, the fruit is for others. It is for someone beyond the vine. So it's not just beyond us, it's also beyond Jesus. He gives to us so we can give to others. Sometimes he does just give to us, but if that's all we ever do, then we know we're not going to bear fruit, and that's not going to go well long term. So the fruit is for someone beyond the vine, and the branches don't just consume it. It's so that others beyond us can consume and benefit. The fruit is for those beyond us to consume and see a benefit from. That's how we know we're connected. That's what Jesus says. If we bear fruit, because that fruit is recognized and it benefits someone else, that's how we'll know we're actually connected to the vine. We can manufacture a lot of what we need just to get through life. And long term, that ends up, most of us, finding frustration and discouragement, and we lose hope. But if we will stay connected to him, allow him to pour into us, and then we will allow it to flow out, then he continues to pour life into us, and we continue to feel alive. If it all settles in us, then we feel stagnant and dead. So just as last time we spoke, we knew the old life was draining out when we saw less and less evidence or fruit from the old source. So I think the phrase we used was become nothing. And so we knew that was happening when we saw less evidence of the old life flowing from us, and it was draining out. But we'll also know that we'll see fruit of the new life when we see more and more fruit coming from that side of the equation, or from that source. The same is true now. We know the new life is flowing in when we see more and more fruit that looks like its source. I mean, that's a simpler way to say it. If what we're seeing is fruit that looks dead or like our past, then maybe we're still too connected there. We haven't drained it hasn't drained all out. But if we are seeing more and more fruit that looks like hope and life and eternal fruit, and other people are benefiting, then we can at least, to a degree, recognize that as evidence that we are connected to the new source. It's how we know we are still connected and the flow is unhindered as well. Because over time we might see some fruit and we might feel rejuvenated, we might feel hopeful and excited about our connection to Jesus, but we can always go back and check how connected we still are and how well that life flow is moving through us if it's unhindered. Because over time we maybe disconnect, or we stretch out the connection so it takes more to get through to us, or we bring things into our vessel, and so that flow becomes hindered and doesn't flow through as well. So we see less fruit if we are further away or disconnected, or if we start blocking up the flow. So that comes when we maintain our connection. That happens as we carry our cross. So we need to connect and we need to carry. So the connect gets us what we need. The carrying our cross maintains our connection and our flow, and keeps our flow from becoming hindered. So this we're going to find in Luke 14:27, where Jesus says, "Anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." Because again, last week we talked about taking up our cross, and this week we need a plan to carry it around and while we follow Jesus. I don't mean to say we simply allow it to exist. So when I use that phrase maintain, I don't mean that we just allow it to continue to be. It's like your cell phone provider. You have a connection through which information and data flows, and you maintain your account, meaning you allow it to remain simply by not canceling or severing your connection. However, you are not doing the maintenance that's required to remain connected and keep that data flowing. Somebody else is doing that. That's AT&T's responsibility, or the people who come out and you see them working on the connections on the street, or the people who are putting up and maintaining the cell towers. So they are doing the maintenance. We are just maintaining our connection by not severing it. So when I say maintenance, I'm saying we need to get involved. It's not enough just to not disconnect from Christ or to renounce him and call that, well, I'm maintaining my relationship with Jesus just because I haven't completely told him to get lost or that I'm never coming back. What we need to do is get out there and get our hands dirty and do the maintenance of preserving the flow of data and the connection to the data like those linemen do. So we're not just maintaining, we are doing maintenance on our connection. So we don't just pick up our cross as a one-time act, we continue to carry it. We don't simply agree with the idea of the cross, and we can't merely accept the benefits of the cross. We need to be involved. A relationship requires involvement. Let's also take a look at Matthew 10:38 and 39, and that says, "Whoever does not take his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." Interesting that he combines these ideas as one complete thought. And I think this rendering is interesting because it reads, "Whoever finds his life." Did you need to find your life? We were born, we live, we have life. What would be the point? Why would he say find? What if somebody finds their life? It creates a picture of someone essentially like going about life and just stumbling across something that they didn't maybe necessarily want or know that they had lost. So the process sounds kind of like Jesus saying, pick up your cross, follow me. It kind of sounds like he's saying, hey, pick that up, carry it, follow me. And then we say, oh, hey, what's this? And we drop our cross and lose sight of Jesus. And then we realize we've lost our connection when we stumble across our life. So when he says, whoever finds his life, it's like we stumbled across our life, or our old life, which is what he's referring to. And when we did that, we dropped our cross, we stopped looking at Jesus because we're looking back at our old life. And then by the time we look up, oh gosh, where's Jesus? So if I asked you to borrow your phone and you tell me you've lost it, which is what Jesus is encouraging us to do, if we lose our life, that's a benefit. So if we keep with the analogy, if I asked you to borrow your phone and you tell me you've lost it, you couldn't access it even if you wanted to. You might even say, sorry, I lost my phone. Which would be like you saying, I've had my hands full of the cross and I've been focused on more important things, following Jesus. And actually, I hadn't even noticed it. I haven't even missed it. But when we take our hands off the work that he gives us and our focus off him, and it drifts back to our former connection, like stumbling on going, oh, hey, here's my phone. Hey, there's my old life. I just found it. As soon as that happens, we take our eyes off Jesus, we take our hands off what he's given us to do, and us keeping our eyes on him and keeping our hands on what he's given us to do that helps us maintain that connection. That's why that idea we've talked about a handful of times over the last handful of messages, we only do what we see him doing, and we only say what we hear him saying. As soon as we take our focus off of those things and onto ourselves or our old habits and desires and maybe even addictions, then we're drawn right back into that old life, which is more like death. And so that at that point, once again, we're connected to an unhealthy source, and we may need to restart the whole process of severing, draining down to nothing, connecting, and going through to maintaining that connection. And actually, that idea is even understating the situation. In Matthew 12, starting in verse 43 through 45, here's what Jesus says. When an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through arid places, seeking rest, and it does not find it. Then it says, I'll return to the house I left. And when it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean, put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself. And they go in and live there. And the final condition of that person is worse than the first. That's how it will be with this wicked generation. So what he's saying here is we can get rid of the old life. We can even get ourselves cleaned up and in order. But unless we connect to the new life and something else comes in, at some point, we don't just remain static and empty. If we do, then we're going to go back to those. We're going to refill it with the things we did before. So we have to fill it with the new stuff, or we just go back to our old life. So as we switch illustrations, our dying body analogy breaks down a bit right here, because spiritually speaking, that old source coming from the old man didn't actually originate within the old man. The old man, our old man, is predisposed to receiving life, if we can call it that, from a contaminated source, which actually makes it death. So when we die or choose to be included in Jesus' death, that old life / death drains out, but it doesn't run onto the ground and just sink into the ground, never to be heard from again. Because of that, our participation in the new life only works when we pour something new in and allow the new to push out the old. So, because I guess if we try to stick with the analogy, if we sever and we're draining out the old, if it completely drains out, then we would be maybe completely dead. but there would still be remnants in there. It's not going to drain out completely on its own. It would have to be drawn out or pressed out. So there's always the need for the new to come in and push out the old. We follow Jesus as our new replacement habit for our old habit of following our own desires and our own path. So let me say that this is super important. We follow Jesus as our new replacement habit for our old habit of following our own desires and our own path. If we simply resolve not to focus on the old connection without a new connection to focus on, we're far more likely to follow our focus, which is actually still on the old life, even if we view it now as less than or undesirable. And that doesn't even take into account the fact that our old source, Satan, which fed the sinful nature in our old man, will continue to pursue us. Satan is going to continue to pursue us whether we focus on him or not. So we're not just fighting against our old man. We're not just trying to sever and separate ourselves from the death in that old body. We're also maintaining our new connection as a defense and an offense, a strategy to fend off the enemy from the outside, who is just happy as can be to be feeding that old man the contaminated life. So remember, we focus on the new, and Jesus promises to provide us with the new. Wrapping up here, Romans 6:5 says this: if we have been united with him in a death like his, we shall certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. That's life. That's worth contending for. And we will talk more about that next week as we dig deeper into what continuing to follow Jesus looks like. Until that time, stop by jointhepursuit.net, where, among other things, you can find out how to stay better connected with us via social media. And again, I hope to see you there.